Changi Om Panu Tosho. Let's do the four. Let's do the four noble truths. Let's do them in English first and then in Tibetan. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semjen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pajutik dungal tang dungal chitutang trawajutik dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindra wajutik nering chaktang nitang trawe tang nong chepola ne pajutik. So good evening, everybody. And tonight we're going to do out of the ugly duckling into elimination and realization. If you weren't here last week, you just go onto the YouTube of our center and there you'll find last week's, because I'm not going to go through too much from last week because I want to go on and really take these teachings further. But what we were talking about was the ugly duckling who thought she was an ugly duckling until the swans came along and they said she was a beautiful swan, and then she didn't believe them. She went to the water, she saw her reflection, and she said, I am a swan. And so we were talking last week about how it wasn't that she transformed into a swan, it was that she'd always been a swan, but she couldn't see it. She couldn't see with that pure vision. So it was really, really, really her being able to see who she really was. Now, Pammy sent me such a lovely WhatsApp tonight. I was she said, all the ugly ducklings are waiting for you tonight. Now, next week, Pam, I want you to send me one. All the swans are waiting. Thanks, because all the swans are waiting, not the ugly ducklings, okay? Because maybe when we've actually cleared it and gone into the swan-like real nature of mind, then we really are exactly like that in our nature of mind, which we'll come to talk about. But I call this out of the ugly duckling into elimination and realization. And where did I get this idea from? Not from myself. I read this sentence in Mipam Rinpoche's biography called a Namtar, where what it said in the book was, Mipam's qualities of elimination and realization were immaculate, and nothing else was written about it. I just loved this sentence, but there was nothing else written about it. So I started pondering, which is my way of becoming aware. What did it mean? His qualities of elimination and realization were immaculate. What it actually meant was, well, for me anyway, what I thought it was, you can add to it with pleasure, that elimination means allowing all misconceptions of the human mind, the human part of the mind, to dissolve, not attaching to anything solid and permanent, seeing human perception as impure, illusory, and clearing the veils, all the veils of all those human things that we have, all of them, all of those negative emotions, we suddenly see as wisdom. It's not that the negative emotions turn into wisdom. It's that the negative emotions were always the identical energy as the wisdoms. So it's not a question of getting rid of the human negative emotion. It's when you get the pure perception, it's still illusory, but then you see the negative emotions as something which is wisdom and showing us how to really be in samsara, the illusionary world. It's really a very important thing. And see if we can have the Buddhism of sheep with the lamb, looking at the poor lamb chops in the butchery, okay? And he says, this is from the book Buddhism for Sheep. I did this long ago. And the poor little lamb is looking in the butcher shop and says, it is necessary to gain the insight that life is impermanent. When he sees the special offer on lamb chops, okay, life is impermanent. And for us too, it's really very important to see it. So thank you, Fee. The elimination is when you clear the veils, you eliminate all the obstacles, but they never were real, the obstacles. The obstacles are purely our mental ideas of how many obstacles we see all the time in our daily lives. And if we can clear and eliminate those, there is the swan. And the swan is who we really are. And I'm going to give you something in a minute on that. But that's the elimination. The realization is she suddenly realizes she's actually a swan. But she saw herself before as the circumstances of this little life. The small identity of the ugly duckling is gone in a moment of realization. It's not like she worked and worked and worked and worked to get to see that she was a swan. And this is the point of this wonderful story, which Fiona sent me, Danny Kaye's song. And if you really want to hear it beautifully sung, you know, it came from Hans Christian Andersen. She sent it off to the group yesterday, and I just cried because I remembered myself as a little girl and that gramophone, telling my mother to put it on again and again and again because I loved the story, not really knowing that, you know, the story was our own recognition, our own opening up. Now, Mipam Rinpoche recognized all of this, but does it mean in a moment of realization that she's a swan, that the ugly duckling won't come back tomorrow, or next week, or next year, or next life? Yes, it does, unfortunately. Because what I do is I'm always trying to see how my nature of mind would view something rather than my human perception, especially when it's something I really don't like, you know, that I'm watching and everything. But because of that habit conditioning, because we are so in the habit of clicking into the negative emotions and staying put there, and then next minute going back. So we might have one recognition, wow, there's so many things independent of this little identity that can happen through me. But later that day, you might have a glimpse of it. And then later that day, something awful happens, and then you go back into the habit momentum. So you have to keep realizing until it's permitted fully. And that takes a long time. And I've got to say to all of you, you know, I don't really care if you don't do practices. Doesn't really matter for me. Lots of people say, I don't relate to the cultural, you know, practices of Tibet. I don't understand what they are. I am so happy to explain them, because without the practices, the only reason why we've got the practices, remember the Buddha said, take the boat, build it, cross the ocean, and when you get to the other side, drop the boat, drop the raft. And so we can drop the practices once we are in that realized state. We don't have to practice. I know that Ekong Rinpoche never, I don't think, ever sat down for formal practice, but he was in that state of meditation all the time. He never got out of that state of meditation. So we have to take our attachment to our habit momentums and get our mind state out of the different realms of samsara. So you know the realms are the hell realm. So that's when you're really going through a terrible time. In Buddhism, they say you can be born in the hell realm, but born in the hell realm is really a state of mind, because one moment of recognizing and you're out of the hell realm. You know, many years ago, I used to go in my sleep state, and I used to be taken to this place. I never used to see who was taking me, but I used to be taken to this place, which was obviously a state of hell, okay, because when I got there, these beings there, and I went a lot of times, not just once, used to throw things at me and tomatoes and everything, and I was trying to teach them, but they weren't listening. One or two would listen. But what was the point? The point was that when you are in a negative state of mind, when you are in a hungry ghost realm, which is when you're craving and you're attached, and whatever you're craving for, it's never enough. Whatever I give you doesn't fill that empty stage, okay? When you're in those realms, all it takes is one moment of recognition and you're out. So if one of those people, they're in a hell realm and it's very repetitive and it's very painful, and say the mountains are closing in on you because in your mind this is really happening, and one thought of there's got to be more to this, and you're out of the hell realm. Now, you know, sometimes people come and sit in front of me and I can see they're in an absolute hell realm. Everything is going wrong. Everything is not working for them. And really, really, truly, one little change, one little alteration of that mindset, and they're out of that state. But unfortunately, because of the habit momentum, and because we see things as permanent, even when we have that moment when the nature of mind shines through us and comes through us, we go back the next moment. So we have to keep practicing. It's really important. So whenever I'm angry, whenever I'm depressed, whenever I'm whatever, anxious about something, I'm looking at what the wisdom is here. I'm looking at the fact that this is not tangible, this is not permanent, this is not me, but what is it? I'm questioning that. I'm inquiring about it. What is this? What wisdom is this that I need to see to change me? It's so important. So I'm going to start tonight with the story of the worm, which is a very interesting little story. If I can find it, should be here. Story of worm. I had you all ready earlier. Sorry, everybody, I'll be 1 second. Here we are. So the story is a very, very typical story. It's a wonderful little story about two monks who lived together in a monastery for many years. They were great friends. Then they died within a few months of each other. One of them got reborn in the heaven realms, and the other monk got reborn as a worm in a dung pile. You may ask why. Well, if that was his state of mind. The one up in heaven was having a wonderful time, enjoying all the godly pleasures, but he started thinking about his friend. I wonder where my old mate has gone, he said. So he scanned all the beautiful God realms. He couldn't find a trace of his friend. Then he scanned the realm of human beings, but he couldn't see it. So he looked in the realm of animals and then of insects. Finally, he found him, reborn as a worm in a dung pile. Wow, he thought, I'm going to help my friend. I'm going to go down there to that dung pile and take him up to the heavenly realm so that he can enjoy the heavenly pleasures and bliss of living in these wonderful God realms. So he went down to the dung pile and called his mate. And the little worm wriggled out and said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm your friend. We used to be monks together in a past life." And he said, "And I have come to take you up to the heaven realms where life is wonderful and blissful." But the worm said, "No, thank you. I'm quite happy here in my dung pile. So please go away." Then the heavenly being thought, well, if I could just grab hold of him and take him up, then he could see for himself how wonderful it is when he's free. So he grabbed hold of the worm and started tugging at him. And the harder he tugged, the harder that worm clung to his pile of dung. Now, trust me, that story is the story of us, okay? Sometimes I go to people, I'm screaming and I'm going like, don't you get it? Can't you see your repetitive thing that is happening to you? Can't you get it? And they're looking at me, I mean, almost saying to me, "You're very kind, thanks for trying, but no, I don't get it. My life is up to." Okay, now think about this. Ponder it very, very deeply. It's a realm. It's where we are living in our human part of our minds, in samsara, the illusionary world. And we really need to change this. And how? And then I'll open it for discussion. James Lowe says, our awareness needs to be understood correctly. It is closer to us than our heartbeats, yet infinitely foreign to our ordinary sense of self. So when we're going through samsara and we're living in this world and there are all these terrible wars and people being cruel to each other and blah, 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 okay, we cannot see even a glimpse of that nature of mind. Remember last week I told you about the 3 visions. 1, the impure illusory vision that we see with our human self in samsara. 2, the pure illusory vision. Those are the beautiful deities, the qualities, the colors that we see, which are also illusory, but pure illusion. And finally, when we get into the nature of mind, we see things as they really are. And how are they? When we come before a master and he's looking at us, what's he seeing? Is he looking at our clothes? It's a very strange thing. But a lot of these high masters hardly ever ask you about your actual life, the identity in this life. They ask you spiritual questions, but they don't really bother. You know, do you have a boyfriend? Are you married? Do you have this? Do you have troubles? Are you poor? Are you rich? They never ask those kind of questions because those are irrelevant. Because James Lowe says, we are not who we think we are. Our nature and awareness is revealed when we drop our reliance on concepts. The concepts are when we work out all the time what things are, and we don't see ourselves in any way as we are. He says, we are used to, habituated to being a particular identity, being ourselves. So I've got the habit of being Melanie. You've got the habit of being Kathy and Phyllis and Di and Fiona. You've got the habit, and I've got the habit of being Melanie. He says, but we've only been in this identity for a very short time. And in our previous lives, we've had different identities. He said, why don't we find an enduring identity? What can our enduring identity be? Now, this is where some of the deity practices come in, because those are more enduring identities. I can completely relate to Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche. I can completely relate to green Tara and white Tara. And lots of you can relate to Chenrezig or the medicine Buddha. Why not adopt an identity, if not one identity? Why not adopt an identity that goes through all your lifetimes? Now, what he says is, the reason we need to move out of being Melanie or Peter or Viam or Sean or someone, whoever, is because this is not a good basis for our life. Because death will come. And he says, when death comes, your mind will whirl off and go somewhere else. And unless you have an identity that can contain and direct this anxious self at the moment of death, it will be terrified. He says the identification with Guru Rinpoche, or whichever complete nature of mind you can identify with, it's also a temporary identity, but it goes across past, present, and future. It's not that I am Melanie pretending to be Guru Rinpoche or Green Tara. I am Guru Rinpoche forgetting myself and then imagining I am Melanie. Shock. It's a shock when you think of that. Because this identity is a teeny weeny dot in the sandpit, 1 grain of sand. And yet we think it's the beginning and the ending of absolutely everything. And when we're going through a hard time, I cannot begin to tell you how people just struggle. Why aren't I getting the job I want? Why haven't I got enough money for my life? Why did I have to lose my special partner? Why did I have to lose the child I love so much? Why did I have to have a break-in and a burglary? Why this? Why that? Okay, because this identity has got to be shaken up. We have to shake it up to realize how much more, and I can only say to you, I work hard at this, but it's not hard work. It's actually non-action, because it's actually when Melanie starts letting go and letting be, then the rest of me can come forward. Now, I'll prove it to you when I'm teaching, because honestly, if you look on my notes, there are a couple of things that I've mentioned here, but I'm giving a completely different talk. But the reason I make the notes is for a very important reason, because I've seen a couple of people who give lectures without notes, and then they go, and then they get all entangled. They never have a proper thread through, and they're going a bit here, a bit there, a bit everywhere. And really, it's very important to keep a thread. But so far, I've hardly said anything except the quotes that I've had here. So the thing is, it's really important what I'm saying, because how do we put spirituality? Mimi, you there, I know you're not feeling so well tonight, but just tell us just give me that quote that you had from Eckhart Tolle when you went to his lecture the other night. That one quote that you said that
about the universe. He said that it's not here to satisfy or make you happy. It's just here to wake you up. All the challenges, everything you go through, it's to wake you up. That's it.
Yeah. It's not here to satisfy you, said Eckhart Tolle. She went to his lecture. She said it was very interesting because he said a lot of things that were similar to what we're learning about. But, you know, it's interesting because he said, we're not here to be satisfied. I mean, you can be satisfied. If you're doing what you love, you certainly feel a lot better than if you're not doing what you love. Okay? But let's be honest. It's not here to satisfy. It's a schoolroom. We're here to learn, to finish those karmic imprints. I'm going to talk about them in a minute again. But we're here to really clear those imprints so that by the time we finish, if we can do it during this life, amazing. If we can't, then at least let's leave this life knowing where we're going, not going and feeling. I've watched people who are so afraid at death. Now, obviously, all of us are going to be a little afraid at the time of our death. But just think about it. You know, if you know that at death, this full identity of Melanie is going to be gone, 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 gone. And all my children, grandchildren, husbands, whatever else are all going to be gone. And if I'm hanging on to them, then I'm like the worm in the dung pile. Okay, they're not done, but I'm hanging on to them. I'm hanging on to this identity. I have to be free to allow that, to understand that that's your temporary life. That was what you came to do. You had to try and see the wisdoms through the poisons. But now it is time to go into your true state. Now, if you miss that, Dumbledore said in Harry Potter, let me see, I like that. Let me just see. Said in Harry Potter that to the well-organized mind, death is just the next adventure. That's beautiful, Danny. I love that. That's so true. It's the next adventure, but not the adventure of another little identity. It's the adventure of opening up into who you really are and knowing full well what you're going to do. I know that my role, when I'm finished my earthly life, my role has got to be a very similar one. I've still got to teach and enlighten. That's my true being, says that to me all the time. So I'm still going to carry on enlightening in all the different universes and realms and whatever. That's what I have to do. But that identity is not Melanie. That identity is something that comes through me into whatever the work is that I have to do. Any comments, any questions, and then we're going to go on to a lot of stuff and do a meditation. Anyone want to say anything, comment? I'm really happy to receive anything that you want. And Tati, I will deal with the imprints and all of that, the Alaya consciousness, the psyche, all of that as well. I've got it all written down in my notes if I ever get there. Anyone want to say anything? You're welcome, or ask anything. No? Phil, go on. Turn on. We'd love to have you back with all your cross-examiner. Can't hear you. You've got to unmute yourself. There's a little...
Okay, better? Can you hear?
I can hear you, yeah.
Unfortunately, people have got it totally wrong in lifetime. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience,
Exactly.
not the reverse.
Exactly.
And I think that lies at the root of many, many misperceptions, misconceptions, and a lot of illusion. And yes, because of that, they are completely attached to the form. That's it. Everything is attachment to the form.
That is very, very good. And it's so true. But what I'm looking at when we look at the relative truth and the ultimate truth, it's very difficult to live in the relative world with an ultimately truthful mind because people don't get it.
Of course.
But no, but if you can see through, then you can also see the beauty in each individual and give it to them at the level that they can understand it.
Of course.
That's beautiful, though. I think that's wonderful. So I just want to tell you all that in describing our current state of samsara, Jigme Lingpa, who was one of the great, great masters that I've studied a lot of, he said this, which I think says it all. As human beings, we find the 5 Buddha, wisdom dimensions eclipsed by the 5 aggregates of body-mind. So what he's saying is the 5 aggregates of body-mind are your form, your feelings, your perception, how you see things, which become habits and which become your consciousness. Those block out the wisdoms. So as soon as we can let those dissolve, which we're going to talk about later or next time, as soon as we let the aggregates dissolve, then there are the Buddha wisdoms absolutely in their pure form. He says the second point, the essential clear light, and you know the nature of mind is essential clear light or emptiness, which means full of possibility and full of spaciousness, is veiled by the sensory fields and the karma. So the sensory fields are everything you see, everything you touch, everything you are, and your karma, which is cause and effect. He says the essential clear light is veiled by this, but the essential clear light is not conditioned by any of this. So if you can get into the swan-like essential clear light, then all the other things are not a veil anymore. And thirdly, he says, your vision of reality is obscured by afflictive emotions. So you can't see reality because of your afflictive emotions, which is a very important point. We're so fickle. We're fickle. One day it's going well and we feel great. The next day it's going, everything awful happens and our moods change. You know, sometimes I look at these very, very big stars, and some of them have become absolutely famous and amazing in what they're doing and everything. I saw that young new tennis star in Melbourne. I saw him going, and then everybody was screaming for his autograph and everything as he went by. And I just look at them and I say to myself, please no. Enjoy what you have, do what you have well, but know that that doesn't last, okay? And find something really through that in your real nature of mind, because I think that social media are really platforms for a fake interior. I think 3/4 of what's on, I think 3/4 of what's on the media is just fake, and just to show yourself in a very good light. I'm going to mute you, Phil, otherwise we hear all your noises. Sorry. I think it's all absolute fake, and I think we're so fickle and we label everything. And I think this well story that I told last time was such a lovely story to know. A man dug a well by the side of the road. For a long time after this, weary travelers felt so grateful that they could recharge at the well. They called it the Wonderful Well. They put a beautiful sign, the Wonderful Well, where you could refresh yourself. But one night, a man fell into it and drowned, and it became known as the Dreadful Well, and travelers started avoiding it. Later, it was discovered that the drowned man was a thief who was drunk and had left the road to avoid the police. It became widely known that the drunken thief had fallen into the justice dispensing well. Okay, so that's how fickle we are. Depends how we like it, what happens, what we do. Our intellect labels according to the mood of the day. And we have to understand this, because it's not true. If somebody comes to you and says to you, you know, you're this and you're that and you're the other, you don't need to go and get yourself into a knot. You can actually say, well, that's your perception of me. That's all. And it's only somebody else's perception. It's never the truth. So I think, to come back to Jigba Lingpa, sound like a croaky frog from all the talking I've been doing. Jekpelinka wrote some very good things, and he said, when people with deviant view, their minds controlled by externals, in other words, their minds are controlled by everything that's happening around them. When they see the door of irrefutable truth, their entire mountain of belief collapses. So one glimpse at the nature of mind and everything is dissolved. That's what he's saying. And he says, for those who understand ultimate truth, perception, how you see things, becomes devoid of expectations and disappointments. So what happens, happens. You may not feel wonderful about it, but you actually understand I'm in the right place at the right time, and so all is just as it needs to be. When you have that no expectation and no disappointment, how different our lives become. And then he says, with the internal grasping mind as the cause and an external fixated object as the condition, you wander constantly in samsara. So he's saying, if your mind is always going, I want this, and I need this, and why are people awful to me, and I better do this better, and why don't I do my job better, and all of that, then that is your internal grasping mind, and that's the external, and you'll always wander in samsara, never to change it. Any questions, any comments? There's a lot to teach, but I don't want to teach it if people are, are wanting to say anything or tell anything. Anyone? Very quiet group, I've got to say. No arguments, no chit-chat. Are you a swan yet, Pammy? Okay.
No, I can say a little something if people just want to be quiet for a second. Maybe they'll hear something and comment on this. But what you're talking about, that last part of the expectations, it's been a big thing for me this last year, realizing that, managing expectations and coming to that, like the view. That's what I also get from what you say in the beginning. The meditation is like, if you work on the view, and dial it in from there into the details of my everyday life, but that view, and like coming to the view that samsara is suffering, and and I will never gain any happiness from that. But like I've got this, and understanding I've got this habitual momentum to go to samsara. My mind kind of goes to it in various ways, but this thing of, we struggle when we expect samsara to be a source of joy when it's actually a source of suffering. And if we didn't have all these unreasonable expectations of samsara, we wouldn't be so disappointed, in people and in the job and in all these things. Like you say, you wonder why is the money coming, or people are not treating you the way you think you should be treated, and all these little stories, and it just becomes layers and layers on narratives and kind of conversations in your mind, and just that is enough to burn you out. And it's not even really happening. It's just your perceptions and your conceptualization about that, and then all of that going just on, and then just wasting this life, and then there it went. You just got to busy in your head with all this nonsense the whole time. So, and I think for me, it's like, it's easy to say, stop the nonsense, stop thinking, do something relaxing, but that doesn't fix the big picture view, which is there's no happiness to be found in the sources that you think you're going to be finding it in. And from there, I feel I can manage those narratives better when they come, like refute it as like nonsense or futile to try and engage in it.
I agree with you 100%. I really, really do. And I think when you can come to terms with it, but a lot of people come to terms with it theoretically, they come to terms with it theoretically, and they don't actually apply it in their lives. it's very, very difficult, because when you say the view, you know, I'm going to talk about the view, meditation, conduct, and action and result, which is part of every practice. And in the view, you see, the main thing of the view is, of course, you've got to say samsara is temporary, it's me grasping at everything, it's impermanent. You have to have that in your view. But if people are giving up, if people are giving that all up, and they're giving up their view, I mean, they're giving up the whole of samsara, it's really, really difficult if you don't know what there is to substitute for samsara. Because this is the problem. People are grasping in exactly the same way that you're seeing, but it's because they don't know that there is this whole part of them that would come through if only they would let it happen. Do you know what I'm trying to say? They don't know that there is anything else or anywhere else to go except in your daily life and what you're doing in your daily life. And that's where it becomes so different, because every time I'm in a pickle, I just come into my shrine room and I sit for a while. And it's so interesting, because I don't know why this is happening. Maybe one of you could tell me, but on my Zoom meetings, things are appearing in the background. It's not from me manipulating them. They seem to be appearing when I'm talking to someone. So I was telling somebody to actually let everything be, let everything go. And suddenly these balloons came up behind me. So I don't know if it's AI interfering, because I can see the app is there of AI. Also, when someone said, you know what I did, Melanie? Then the hand came up like this. It's like creepy in a way, because it's like somebody's listening into our conversation and agreeing or disagreeing, and these things appear on the screen. Maybe one of you who knows why it happens like that, I don't know. But I'm saying to you that it's really, really very important to know that there's another way of life. That if you are prepared to give up what you're talking about, Viam, that attachment to all these material things and everything in samsara, there's another way completely and totally. So last time we were talking about the relative truth and the ultimate truth. We're going to meditate in 5 minutes. But we were looking at both of these, and the relative truth is how our ordinary mind perceives things. It's called Sen in Buddhism. The ultimate truth is the way things really are, that you see through Sen Ni, which is the full total nature of mind. But we now understand that the way we live in samsara is a conditioned truth, a conditioned existence. And the laws of karma only apply in this relative world. As soon as you get to the ultimate truth, it's not conditioned by everything. That's what I started telling you last week. It's empty, spacious, pure, luminous, unborn. It doesn't come from somewhere. It's not going anywhere. It just is. That is your true nature of mind. And it's called the indestructible union of awareness and emptiness. Now, the question comes, if you're living in a relative world and you're living in a very busy world, how can you apply this when you're busy doing tangible things all day long and your time is demanded? And so I took this beautiful story from Tulku Urgyen about his guru, Samten Gyatso, who was his absolute wonderful guru, his root guru, and it was, I think he was also his uncle. And Tulku Urgyen said, once you are stable in Rigpa, Rigpa is another name for the nature of mind, then no matter what happens, suffering, illness is only an expression of Rigpa, an ornament Now, if you look at ornaments in your lounge, you see there are lots and lots and lots of ornaments. But if you take them away, it doesn't matter. Basically, the lounge stays. So what we have to understand is, no matter where we go in crowds, chatter, or negative circumstances, it's all the same training in Rigpa. So Samtonjien Gyatso, just before his passing, Tulku Urgent went to talk to him. And he said on one occasion, he revealed some extraordinary secrets about his own practice. One day he told me, I really have no great qualities. Well, that wasn't true, but he said, I really have no great qualities, nothing marvelous to boast about, except that my distraction has completely vanished. His distraction has vanished. Now, I'm watching all of you, even while you're here. Any little movement in the room, and your mind goes after it. Anything you're thinking, and your mind goes after it. That's called distraction. And he said like this, the tendency to forget my mind essence, that's your nature of mind, seems to have vanished completely from my experience. No matter how much work piles up, no matter who comes in to see me, no matter how many people crowd into my room, the lucid quality only grows. Amazing. I find that when I stay alone and uninvolved with no task at hand, the clarity of awareness subsides somewhat, although I'm not distracted. But the more people, the more bustle, the more turmoil I'm involved with, the more the strength of awareness grows. Just between you and me. Of course, at the age of 8, he recognized his nature of mind and he never gave up recognizing Rigpa. What does that tell you? Such an amazing story. So wherever he was, no matter how many people were asking him things, his mind was always focused on Rigpa. It was always there. No matter what he did, no matter where he went, no matter how busy he was. Now think about that, everybody. Something to aim for or not? Because once you are there, nothing affects you. No matter what happens to you, no matter what a person says to you, no matter how it is, nothing affects you. Because that whole Rigpa is, the Dalai Lama smiling at me, is absolutely unaffected by all the rubbish in your mind. I want you to think about that. And I want us to do a meditation now. And let's try and do non-distraction in the meditation. So put yourself in a meditative posture, your hands on your lap, right over left with the thumbs touching, in a lotus or half lotus, one foot in front of the other if you can, and if you're on a chair, that's okay. But just be non-distracted. So in order to help you, those that don't need the breath, don't use the breath. Those that find they get distracted every minute, just go to the breath, in and out, and in and out. And that is your beautiful focus. That's where you are, and that's your beautiful focus. Doesn't really matter what you focus on in order to get yourself non-distracted. But the breath is the easiest because it's in us, and you just focus totally on the breath, and you're watching totally awake. You're so awake that you're aware of every single movement. My voice, you're hot, you're cold, you are totally awake and aware. Your eyes are open if possible, because you don't want to sleep. That is how you get to be non-distracted. First, you focus on the breath, and then in time, you don't have to focus on anything. You just stay, and you just are aware of everything, absolutely everything. In our present perception, everything we see seems to be solid, concrete, stable, and actually existing. This is our impure, illusory perception. From the viewpoint of our beautiful nature of mind, all our perceptions of the 6 senses are as insubstantial as rainbows in the sky. A rainbow originates and appears when all the necessary conditions are present. The rain, the sun, whatever needs to be present. And if one condition is missing, it will not appear. Then the rainbow appears and seems to abide as something tangible, when in reality, there is nothing, no thing there. A rainbow cannot be located or pinpointed, either outside, inside, or anywhere in between. Finally, to where does a rainbow depart or disappear? The answer is nowhere. A rainbow just naturally fades away when the causes and conditions that make it appear are no longer present. In the same way, our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions are just like rainbows. They appear when all the causes and conditions for their occurrence are present. Someone annoyed you, someone insulted you, someone praised you, someone overlooked you. Whatever the story, they are all like rainbows. They come together when all the causes and conditions are present. And when any of these conditions just are no longer present, they naturally disappear, just as rainbows do. So, if you are in a state of beautiful awareness, fresh, spacious, open, sky-like, and somebody actually comes and disturbs you, insults you, asks you for something you don't like, does something to you, makes you anxious, whatever, the condition for their appearance is your response. If you see it like a rainbow that will dissolve and disappear, then you don't pick it up, you don't hold it, you don't grab onto it, and it just fades away when the causes and conditions are no longer there to maintain it. So it is up to you how you see your life. Can you be like this beautiful master I just told you about, and be aware of your beautiful state of mind when anything is going on. Or are you involved, picking it up, nitpicking, analyzing, holding, grasping? If you're doing all of those things, you are creating the causes and conditions for it to manifest, even though it is totally insubstantial. So when you're going through a hard time during the day, just sit for 2 minutes or walk with awareness for 2 minutes and let it all dissolve, just the same way that rainbows do. So let's just do a few more things. Let's look at how does the world work in actual fact? How do we get these imprints in our alaya consciousness? How do we get to have these different lifetimes? How does it all work? Because once you understand this, then you can start dissolving and being able to do things. So we have to realize, and this might be similar to the way it's explained in some religions, there is primordial ground, primordial purity, which is the ground, the essence, the emptiness. It's also called Dharmakaya, but don't worry about that if you're new to the teachings. But when you look at that, it's the exact same as the God force, only humans took the God force, if you want to call it that, and called it God. I know as a little girl, I always thought of God as this old man with a beard who had these books where he wrote down about everybody. That was my perception of how it was. But if we take it to an expansive level, we have this primordial purity, this ground, this essence, this emptiness, which means full of possibility. Empty is nothing. Emptiness means full of possibility. Okay. And everything arises from this essence, this God force. And its nature, the nature of the God force, is awareness, mindfulness, openness, luminosity. It has a nature. That nature is a living force. And because of this nature in the essence, so things can start appearing. Because the nature is inside. It's luminous, it's beautiful, it's pure in the essence. And then things start appearing from there. Many, many things. And there's a continuous display from the essence. And we can call that display Sambhokakaya. And then Sambhokakaya goes into our realm. It manifests unlimited energy and compassion. And that's how the world comes to be. But all of the manifestation goes back into the essence. So whatever you see, wars and hatreds and angers and everything, it's just a manifestation. We're seeing it as ugly. It wasn't ugly as it came out of the essence, because if the essence is beautiful, the manifestation must be made of the same nature. But our perception with all these veils, let me take my top I was wearing, all these veils, this is what we've got. Okay, because we've got this, we can't see the truth about that luminous expression. And so what happens? Now, I want to explain this to you. That's as far as I'll go in the explanations tonight, because it's kind of enough and you can ask me things. But I want you to see why in Buddhism, the enlightened being, what you are called is, when you finally gain your full freedom, it's called the youthful because it never ages, vase body. Now, when these masters get the youthful vase body, I'm going to show you what happens to them, because it means you don't have birth anymore. You don't have death anymore. I'm not suggesting we're going to get the youthful vase body, but I am suggesting that you understand what it is so that you can know what you are doing when you're trying to learn these teachings and when you're trying to awaken. So this youthful vase body, I showed you last year, I think it looks like this. If you can see this crystal, there's a little Buddha figure in the middle. And if I take this to the light, it has all the different colors. I don't know if you can see. I can see the pink, the reddy color, the yellow, the green. All of it is already inside this vase body, and there's a little Buddha inside. Now, I want to explain to you how the youthful vase body works so that you can all understand, and then we'll bring it back to your low karmic version of everything. But first, before we bring it to the karmic version, we've got to understand the truth when you have an enlightened body. Now, what happens is this image is a lamp, like a lamp inside a vase. So inside you'll see the Buddha, and it's encased in a vase. So it's like there's a lamp inside the vase. But also inside this vase is the life force, the prana, the energy, the beautiful colors are all inside this. Now, as it stands like this, it stays like this. But the minute the prana starts moving, the vase busts open. That's why it's called a youthful vase body, because as soon as the energy starts moving, the vase busts open. And what happens the minute the vase busts open is that all the light starts manifesting out of the vase. What I'm telling you about, it's called spontaneous presence. It just comes out of the vase. All the things you see, including us, come out of the vase. They are the manifestation from the essence. Now, they're luminous, they're pure, they've got these wonderful colors. I'm trying to train my mind to see those colors. When you die, you see them, but for some people, it's so brilliant and amazing, they really get scared and they faint, and so they don't look at it. But those colors are the pure elements that come out of the essence. Now, how does it work? That either you become enlightened, and then you never have to go through all the cycles of incarnations, or you become a human being, a sentient being in samsara with lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until you can attain this again. First of all, there's no attainment, because even when you mess up, it still stays like that. But we don't know. We are already involved in all the lifetimes that there are. So the being, if the being recognizes, knows that all the things that it sees are all just manifestations out of the essence, then it remains awakened. And the energy simply goes back into the essence, comes out again, it comes. when the being knows that this is how it is, then they are enlightened. Now, what happens for the most of people? For the most of people, as soon as they see this energy, as soon as they say, I am seeing that, they separate themselves from it and they see it as dualistic. So you're sitting over there, you've got your pain, shame, but I can't feel it. Okay, bad luck. Or this is bad, or this is good, or this is concrete, or whatever. The minute we move out of the enlightened state and we forget to see that all of that comes from the essence, we are wandering in samsara. Now what happens? Everything that was already absolutely pure now becomes coarse. And we can't see those pure lights anymore. And I am here, and I am Melanie, and I am a self, and I myself, and these are mine, and you are over there, and the whole world becomes coarse. Why? Because I have not recognized, reknown that everything came out of the essence. If it came out of the essence, it must be pure. But I can't see it because I am so involved in Melanie and my identity, I've forgotten. And that is what the story of Adam and Eve is about. The exact story. But people in religions don't know it because what they say is, oh, Adam and Eve sinned. They ate of the tree of life, whatever they did. I don't know, he gave her a bite, whatever they did. And God, this other being, banished them out of the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden is when we see the pure state, the absolute pure state, where there's enough of everything, where we are part of the universe and the universe is part of us. And they were banished, and they represent what we did when we became sentient beings. We moved away from the truth of the youthful vase body. Now, if you don't understand this, if you say, I don't know what she's talking about, that's absolutely fine, because I'm going to teach you about karma and lifetimes and all the things on a relative level, so you have a chance to clear up anyway. But for some of you who really can make the leap, if you can get this, you can start to say, hang on, this anger, is it really anger? No. If I look deeply, if it came out of the essence, it's the rainbow. It's going to go back into the essence. It must be mirror-like wisdom showing me something that I created on a relative level. I have to do this. You know, yesterday, Leah came to my groups. Kathy, you'll laugh. Okay, you know Leah Viola. She came to my group. She hasn't been well at all. So afterwards, she listened to my whole session yesterday morning, and then afterwards, she says, you're a Dharma force, Melanie. She said, you're a force of nature. You're a Dharma force. So I wrote back and I said, is that a compliment or an insult? I'm not sure, because I don't know. I don't really want to be a force. I just want to be light coming through me. But, you know, she said, you're a Dharma force. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. But if this can wake you up a teensy-weensy bit, then it's worth it. Before going on to, we're going to do the marks, the 3 marks of conditioned existence in samsara. We're going to go on to the whole thing that Tatiana was sending me all her questions about. But before we do, I just want you to understand, even if you don't understand what I've said, but I want you to understand that if the force of light, of emptiness, of the essence is pure, spacious, beautiful light and everything else, then whatever is expressed has got to be made of the same material. Can you all understand that? So when we see it's made of, oh, there's a storm coming. So if we see that it's made of the same material, then we've got to change our perception and see it as it really is. Now, Fiona, you are in that philosophical position. We have a few minutes for questions. Question me, challenge me. Kim, you haven't been for a while, and you used to always have a lot to say. Question, ask me, Tati, all of you.
Now,
Yes, please.
even so, we're humans, we're having this experience, but we
Right.
have some understanding, we have some awareness. Even though we have that, a bit of that understanding, we can connect to Rigpa when we remember to. We're still going to be getting frustrated. We're still going to be getting, feeling that anger, that irritation, that, we're in a realm where bureaucracy, war, got all of these samsaric, some of them are really bad. It's really suffering. So we're still going to have a reaction to that or suffering to that. So even though we have this understanding or this awareness, that
Yes.
it's, for me, it's like, okay, I'm so frustrated right now, but I can connect to it and then I can still look at my perception. And that helps me navigate those waters.
Yes, yes. I love that last sentence.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it does for me, because it doesn't mean, I mean, I loved what Marion shared with us about what I can't remember his name now, just lost it, about we're here to learn.
Sorry. Can you hear this? Oh, sure.
Yes, because I just think so many people these days are here, to, I don't know, just be peaceful or, be them
And so many people go on a spiritual path just to be peaceful, try and have a chilled out life, That's what Zomkos Tienzi says. Be politically correct, he says. Do a mindfulness course, join the animal charities, become vegan, do all the right things in that.
Yes.
But when you become a real yogi, you're wild, okay? But you have to be politically correct for all the people that are around. Sure, there's a hell of a storm. Okay, thanks. That's absolutely true. But how do you navigate is what I want to do here. Because every time you just zoom into the true nature of mind, you bring yourself back to that whole story of the youthful vase body, and then you see it's not so tragic, it's not so tangible. Dani, you wanted to say something?
If you were mentioning how the universe is in us and we are all part of it, but then what makes me and you, are we part of like a common like consciousness?
Right.
Like how does that,
How does
yeah,
that-
if it's in all of us, then
Yeah, you see, it is in all of us the common consciousness because of our samsaric consciousness, we gather with other beings that are in the same state of consciousness, okay? There's no doubt about it. If you're a drug addict, you hang out with drug addicts, okay? There's no doubt about it. When people have got a cancer, they hang out with other people that are on a cancer because they've got a similar consciousness at that particular time. Do you know what I'm saying? But what we are looking at here, when we go to the highest view, we are looking at the fact that all sentient beings, never mind their relative consciousness. I'm going to teach you the relative consciousness, but never mind their relative consciousness. But ultimately, everyone, even the ant, the rat, the whatever, has got awakened nature, the potential to be awakened. So we're rather going to go for the primordial consciousness that everyone has collectively, and try, if we are in the consciousness where people are really putting forward rubbish stories and things like that, like you've just got to take, for instance, oh, there's such a storm of terrible lightning. You have to just take the ANC, and you see their consciousness, you know, the one tells a lie, the other one backs it up, the other one backs it up, the other one backs it up. That is samsaric consciousness for the good of the egos. Now we want to try and take ourselves out of the samsaric consciousness into the primordial consciousness, which we find, for instance, when you're around people who are really quite enlightened, which is not that often, but when we do, you feel the consciousness rising up into primordial consciousness. Can you understand what I'm saying? So we're trying to disentangle ourselves from the samsaric consciousness and put ourselves into the primordial consciousness. That's what I'm trying to do. The force of trying to do that. Okay. Lily, please, I'd love to hear your voice. Go
Hi,
for it.
everyone. It was just very interesting when you mentioned the primordial, consciousness, the collective consciousness that kind of exists with all of us. And there's actually a very interesting kind of scientific theory behind that it says that all cells are actually innately created with almost like this innate database. And I think a lot of scientists have started speculating about cells, all the cells that collectively make up humans and other living organisms, like the mycelium network for mushrooms, is that all the cells that make up a human being are actually already programmed, and they're all connected with one another in this almost like network amongst one another. So it's just very interesting you brought up the topic of, well, the conversation point of the primordial collective conscious.
But just hold on a moment, that's true, but just be very careful what you say, because the scientific version is quite different from the Buddhist primordial version, because this is not a collective consciousness. It is in a way that everybody's got that, but those human consciousnesses are really our self-created stuff, even though scientists say, well, we can be programmed and all of that kind of thing. You have to really be a little bit cautious. I'll discuss that with you, Lily, when I speak to you. But the thing is that I think what you're picking up is really good. But what we're talking about here, I know that Jung spoke about the collective consciousness, you know, in his theories. But that collective consciousness is different to the primordial consciousness, because although he did also talk about a higher consciousness, but we don't even say the primordial consciousness is a higher consciousness. We say it's everything that we are. And really what we're doing is just enacting a karmic role on a relative level. So what we're trying to do is tap into that pure primordial consciousness, which is really important. But listen,
sorry, Mel, how do you see that as being different from the collective unconscious?
You see, because, yeah, look, there are some similarities, and certainly Jung had great Buddhist ideas. Okay, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't think he could really put them forward in his time, but I've read and studied Jung for many years. He was the nearest I could come in psychology to all of that. But he did talk about that higher collective consciousness, but the Buddha nature is, how can I say this, a little more than a collective consciousness. Okay, nobody's ever given it to me as a collective. It's a little more. It's like just a pure awakened state that we actually have inside all of us. But okay, you want to call it collective consciousness, that's fine. It's just technical things. But we have to be careful of the scientific things that Lily's talking, because I know she's got a brilliant scientific mind. So is Danny. And we have to bring it, because remember that a lot of this stuff cannot be understood with the intellect. It's got to be understood out of it completely. But let's end, for those that are in a hurry, and I'll stay definitely and talk to you. But please, let's end and dedicate this fee to all sentient beings. May they all find their awakened nature. May they all attain the youthful vase body. May they all realize that everything comes out of the essence. It's pure. And all of the wars, may they cease when people realize that they have to be there for the good of others. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane, topne nepe dranam pamshene, jega nachi bala dropaye, sipe sole, doa dro warsho. Just going to stop the recording.